Welcome back to another episode of Into the Depths of Mystery. Before we begin, as I always say, turn off your lights, get comfortable, and ask yourself this: what if the person lying beside you looks the same, but isn't the one who walked in earlier? Tonight, we dive into the terrifying true incident of Akash, a university student in Delhi, and his roommate Samir, a friend who went out for a few hours and returned with someone we could not see. Back in 2026, I was studying at the University of Delhi. Like most students, a few of us rented a small house near campus. I shared my room with my closest friend, Samir. One evening, around 11 p.m., we were in the living room watching TV. Samir had gone out earlier, and we expected him back at any moment. The front door finally opened, but the person who walked in didn't look like the Samir we knew. His clothes were covered in dust and mud, his hair messed up, and there was something strange in his eyes. We rushed to him, asking, "Samir, what happened? Are you okay?" He stared at us with a cold, angry look and snapped. I fell off my motorbike before we could ask anything else. He walked straight past us. I followed him out of concern and asked again if he was hurt, but he didn't even look at me. He simply said, "I'm fine," and slammed the door right in my face. Samir never behaved like that. He wasn't rude. He wasn't aggressive. Something was wrong, but with nothing else we could do, I returned to the living room, sat down with the others, and we tried to continue watching TV. Around 1 a.m., I finally decided to go to our room and sleep. When I walked in, Samir was already on his bed, sleeping and completely still. I didn't want to disturb him, so I quietly lay down on my own bed and closed my eyes. About 30 minutes later, I heard something. Not loud, not clear, but a whisper. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, or maybe Samir talking in his sleep. But the whisper continued. I became curious, so I opened my eyes slowly and looked around. That's when I saw it. Samir was sitting upright on his bed, staring at the wall, whispering rapidly, as if talking to someone I couldn't see. I thought maybe he was having a nightmare, so I gently called him. "Samir." The moment I spoke his name, his head snapped toward me. His eyes widened unnaturally, and without a second of hesitation, he let out a horrifying scream, a scream that didn't sound like a human voice. Before I could react, he jumped onto my bed like a wild animal, landing inches away from my face. He kept screaming, louder and fiercer. His voice started deepening and twisting, and sounding like more than one voice at once. His face contorted into something almost demonic. His jaw started to stretch, and I can see his eyes burning with rage. For a moment, I genuinely believed he was going to tear me apart, so I screamed as loud as I could. Within seconds, our roommates rushed into the room and opened the door. The moment Samir saw them, his screaming grew even louder. It echoed through the house. Then, in a way no human body should move, he jumped off the bed, jumped toward the wall, and began crawling up it like a spider. For a second, we just stood there, completely frozen. Then fear snapped us back to reality. We ran out of the room, slammed the door shut, and locked it from the outside. Our hands were shaking. None of us could believe what we had just witnessed. We stood there in shock, unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, the door began to shake violently, screaming louder and louder. His voice was deep and distorted. We were so scared that we ran straight out of the house and called our neighbors. They didn't believe a word we said at first, until they went inside and saw it with their own eyes. Samir was still inside the room, pacing back and forth like an animal. When they looked through the window, they heard him scream again, and it no longer sounded like Samir. It sounded like something else was inside him. One of the neighbors whispered, "It looks like he's possessed. We need someone who can handle this." With no idea what else to do, we waited until morning. None of us slept, and when the sun finally rose, one of our neighbors and I went to a nearby temple to bring back a pandit who had dealt with cases like this before. When he arrived at the house, his expression turned serious the moment he sensed the room. He looked at us and said firmly, "I will go inside alone. No matter what you hear, no matter how loud the screams are, do not open the door until I come out myself." We agreed. The pandit entered the room and closed the door behind him. Moments later, we heard chanting, and then Samir's screams returned, louder, angrier, and echoing through the house. The sounds continued for hours. We stood outside, frozen with fear, and praying it would stop soon. Then suddenly, Samir's screams faded away. All we could hear now was the pandit's steady chanting. A few minutes later, the door opened. The pandit stepped out, holding Samir by his arm. Samir looked like himself again, but he was clearly exhausted. We rushed to the pandit and asked him what had happened. He took a deep breath and began to explain. The evening before, Samir was riding back home, but his usual route was blocked by an accident. To avoid the traffic, he took a road he had never used before. After a few kilometers, his motorbike suddenly stopped. The road was completely empty. No houses, no people. It felt abandoned. Samir got off the bike and tried to figure out the problem. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, a woman appeared and calmly asked, "Can you give me a ride to my place?" Samir was startled. He told her the bike wasn't working and that he couldn't help. She looked at him for a moment, then said, "What if I help you fix it?" Samir was confused and shocked by her reply, but he didn't think too much about it and agreed. The woman slowly walked around the bike, placed her hand on it, and asked him to try starting it again. He was shocked again. The bike started instantly, as if nothing had ever been wrong. Samir thanked her and asked her to get on the bike. As they rode, he asked her where she needed to go. She replied quietly, "Just keep driving. I'll tell you when to stop." Samir asked her a few more questions, but she didn't respond to any of them. After some time, he suddenly began to lose control of his motorbike. It swerved violently and crashed into a nearby tree. Samir was thrown to the ground, but strangely, he wasn't injured. His motorbike lay nearby, with only minor damage. He got up slowly and looked around. The road was empty. The woman was gone. Samir looked around, but she was nowhere to be seen. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. That's when he felt something was wrong and wanted to leave immediately. He somehow managed to get back on his bike and ride home, unaware that he hadn't come back alone. The pandit told us the truth. The place where Samir crashed wasn't just an empty road. It was near an old graveyard. The woman he gave a ride to was the spirit of a woman buried there, a restless soul searching for a human body to possess. She didn't want a ride. She wanted him. That spirit entered Samir the moment he let her sit behind him, and that was why he returned home changed. The pandit said the ritual had worked. The spirit was gone, and Samir was free. To this day, we never talk about what happened that night. Samir remembers nothing. Life went on. We still meet, we still laugh, and we're still friends. But sometimes, late at night, when the room is silent, I remember his face. I remember that scream, and it still haunts my sleep, because once you see something like that, you never truly forget it. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this true horror experience, subscribe the channel for more unsettling stories that blur the line between the living and the unseen. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and never pick up a stranger on an empty road.